In a world filled with information, where do you turn to get straight talk about retirement, investments, and your money? Lock it in to the longest running financial talk show in Arkansas and let us help you build the bridge between information and application. Real financial change begins right here, and it starts with you.
It's showtime! Woo!
Good morning. On today's show, what kind of retirement saver are you? Studies show you likely fit into one of 5 types. We'll dig into what those types are and the challenges they can pose.
This is the Get Ready for the Future show.
Welcome in to the Get Ready for the Future show. My name is Scott Inman, along with John Shrewsbury and Candace Stanley with us today. We are glad to have you along on our live stream on this Wednesday morning on our YouTube channel and on Facebook Live. And if you're listening on radio over the weekend, we thank you for doing that as well, and we certainly are glad to see it warm back up if you're listening over the weekend. Cold enough for May.
Yeah.
Everything's cooling off. The markets are cooling off this week. The temperatures have cooled off. I'm ready for summertime. I don't know about you guys.
Well, I was about to say that in Arkansas, you know this cool spell is temporary because you know the heat's coming, and I think probably the cooling off in the market is a little bit temporary too, but you know, it's one that is not unexpected after the blistering run-up that we've had since about March of 2020.
Yeah, we've got a great show on tap for you today. As we mentioned in the open, 5 types of retirement savers. Hopefully we can help you identify which type you are, and really I think the application for you. We're going to give you some tips on how to kind of overcome the challenges that being one of those 5 types might pose. But it is really a psychological show, I think, because that really is where these types of savers originate. Before we get into that, though, I was thinking, I've been watching Ryan Dietrich's LPL Market Signals podcast that he does.
Right.
And, obviously listening for information that he gives us, but also kind of seeing the showmanship that he provides in that and kind of relating it to hosting this show. And have you watched it lately?
I've not had a chance to. I've been really crazy busy, but please inform us.
They've been on this dog joke kick. They've been doing a dog joke. They've been asking people who watch to send in a dog joke, and then they've been sharing it. I think it's over now.
Okay.
I was just trying to think how we at the Get Ready for the Future show could solicit some sort of entertaining component like that.
Well, I'm sure
so we're going to have to ask our listeners and viewers to do that.
Our Facebook Live folks can actually give us some recommendations today.
Yeah. I don't know if it's dog joke. I don't know.
Keep them clean, please.
Yes.
Just please keep them clean. But if you have a recommendation on how we can liven the show up a little bit with some jokes, that'd be fun.
They're fun to watch, though. I mean, Ryan sometimes, I think, forgets he's on a podcast. So he just starts talking about whatever he wants to talk about. So that's fun. We're going to try to stay on point a little bit better than that today. So listen to these numbers. A lot of this is going to derive, a lot of where we're getting our information today, from some surveys, some compilations of studies. Here's one for you. Almost half of Americans who have yet to retire are anxious they won't have enough money to live comfortably in retirement. Now, that's not any surprise to us. We've quoted numbers like that in the past. But even with that, only about 1 in 3 people in their 50s say that saving for retirement is their greatest financial priority, while more than half say their greatest financial priority is simply covering their basic living expenses or paying down debts like credit cards or a mortgage. And of those that are offered a 401k from their job, fewer than 1 in 3 are contributing more than 10% of their income. That comes from Transamerica. So obviously we've talked about the retirement crisis in this country before for many years on the Get Ready for the Future show. As a whole, Americans are not prepared. They don't feel prepared, and they're not really doing the things necessary to empower their financial future because of everything they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, like debt and living expenses.
Yeah, I think sometimes we get very myopic about this, Scott. When you think about how people think about their money, it is kind of a day-to-day thing. And, let's face it, we are barraged with the immediate. We are barraged with the here and now as opposed to the future. We all tend to be a little bit, to some extent, very, I'll just call it very motivated by instant gratification. And so consequently, we have a situation where we take care of what's right in front of us and really don't have time to look up. There's an analogy that we use in our planning here at GenWealth with our company, that if you're, chopping weeds through the woods, sometimes you got to climb the tree and look up and see where you're going, or you're just going to keep chopping until you chop yourself right off a cliff that you didn't see coming. And that's where I think, Candace, a lot of people are in retirement. They're so focused on the day-to-day of what's going on in life, they don't ever climb the tree and look ahead and see where they're going.
Yeah, and see the forest for the trees, right? Yeah, and they get so involved in their day-to-day things and that paying the next month's bill, or these things that they get so wrapped up in, and they forget to look back and see the big picture. And retirement is a picture that's coming closer and closer.
And the problem with that, Scott, is that when people come in, sometimes it becomes very apparent to them that they're not prepared when they sit down and, they're saying, well, I need this much income in retirement. And we're going, yeah, I get that. And here's where you are. So let's talk about how we can potentially get there. Then they've got to hurry. Then they've got to begin to save more at the end, as opposed to saving a little bit more, along the way and being more prepared at retirement.
Yeah, I see this as all these stats that we just shared being a cash flow problem. I mean, it really becomes a situation where you have to deal with the debt. You have to lower your expenses as best you can. And maybe it might even include finding out a way to raise your income, further your career, right? At whatever, depending on what stage of life or what season of life you're in. But there has to be a priority shift on some levels to get to putting money away for retirement. And I hope that this show is going to help you maybe get motivated to do that as we talk about the 5 types of retirement savers. And this first group has been labeled, I don't know where they get these labels, but it's called uncertain strugglers. Okay, so are you an uncertain struggler? This group, according to the surveys, make up about 29% of the population. So this is a large group. Almost a third of us are uncertain strugglers when it comes to retirement saving. They are more likely to rely on instinct and recommendations from family and friends to make financial decisions. Over half of this group is 45 or over, but they don't know much about retirement planning, don't have a financial plan, and haven't calculated income needs in retirement. People in this group are generally pessimistic. You can see that headed towards a snowball effect, right? About living comfortably in retirement, with many expecting to rely on Social Security and help from family to get by. And only 24% expect their savings and sources of income to last through retirement. That's the lowest percentage of any of the 5 types. So pessimism really kind of comes to the forefront in this.
Henry Ford is famous for saying, if you think you can or you think you can't, whichever one it is, you're right. And I think that oftentimes people do get down this kind of rabbit hole, if you will, or this tunnel of thinking that I'm never going to be able to retire. I'm going to work until I die. All of those things that people are common to say. And it really is kind of almost a justification for their lack of saving or lack of preparation or what have you. Hey, I get it. We are not taught a whole lot about saving and investment. When you go and set up your 401k plan at work, usually HR is the one doing that with you. And they go, hey, just fill out this paperwork and have it back to us on Friday. And that's the limit of the expertise that you have on how to manage this. And so I liken it, Candace, to sometimes I would talk about when I was teaching my kids to drive. I give my daughter the keys to the car when she's 14 and go, here's the manual, here's the keys, good luck. Yeah. And that really does create problems down the road.
I feel like this uncertain strugglers group, or those people, when we talk to them and ask them about retirement, they're like, retirement, what's that?
Yeah.
I'm going to
work till I die.
Work till I die. That's not something that's going to happen for me. And I hate that. And it sounds like they're also the group that they'll listen to friends and family, those people in their circle that they like, trust, and believe before they'll may talk to an advisor.
Yes, absolutely. We had a comment from one of our viewers on Facebook. If you climb the tree and look ahead but don't see the wolf, that is on you. And I think that you've got to kind of think about that too. There's a balance to this. You certainly can't be so forward looking about your retirement and your investments that you don't take care of things that are going on right now. That's why we recommend, as we do financial planning for folks, we recommend that you have an emergency fund, that you have 3 to 6 months of income or at least of expenses set aside in an account that has nothing to do with your retirement, has nothing to do with anything else, and you certainly don't want to touch that except for the wolf being at the door.
It's not if the wolf comes. The wolf is going to come.
Oh,
right?
sure.
I mean, all the way through that journey. But as John said, you have to be prepared for that as well. But that takes some forward looking to anticipate the wolf as well.
Yes. People do not create enough margin in their financial life. When you think about margin, you think about when you were writing in grade school, and you had the little red line on this side, and then and the teacher always counted off on me if I wrote all the way to the end of the page. Yeah. It's like, no, you can't do that. You've got to have some margin on this side of the page to make it look good. Well, you got to have some margin in your financial life so that when the wolf does come, you've got some room there to account for that, while at the same time looking ahead and saving for retirement and understanding how to use those retirement vehicles like a 401k plan. I think oftentimes people kind of poo-poo the 401k because they don't understand it. The markets go down. Well, I lost money. That's not working. I need to do something else.
Yeah, the emergency fund's a great tip for uncertain strugglers. Get that done first. A couple of $1,000s parked on the sidelines so that you can begin to put money away for retirement, whether it's $100, whether it's $1,000, whether it's $10. You can start a systematic contribution to your retirement plan, and then if something happens, if that wolf jumps on you, you've got some cash parked on the sidelines to prepare for that. Now, I would say, too, another tip for uncertain strugglers is think about what you are going to live on in retirement if you don't accumulate some wealth. And that's going to be Social Security. Maybe there's a pension involved, and a lot of people do rely on that, too. I think that's sometimes used as an excuse to not save in a retirement account because I've got the backstop of the pension. But if you don't have a pension and you're just going to rely on Social Security, think about this. The estimated average Social Security benefit in 2021, the average is $1,543 per month. And yours is really the only one you should worry about, not the average. And if you think about how, John, it's going to be a fraction of your employment income.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the pension for just a second because I get it. Pensions are great if you have one. But let's really understand the statistics. Only about 12% of Americans have a pension available to them. A lot of those these days are government employees because most corporations have phased out their pensions. But even if you have a pension, do you understand that one decision by a manager that basically says, okay, you're out, then stops any pension accrual that you might have. And so you really can't just forego savings and say, I'm going to have a pension because I'm going to be working here for the rest of my life, because Candace, oftentimes that's not really up to the saver.
Yeah, because if you're still just relying on the pension, then you are still committing to living paycheck to paycheck in retirement too, when you don't have another level of liquidity for access for extra things.
Yeah, and the other thing, Scott, most pensions are not adjusted for inflation. When you think about one of the things that you absolutely have got to do in retirement, one of the three big risks of retirement is trying to deal with the inflation factor. We're seeing inflation begin to heat up right now in our economy and what have you. One of the big risks that you have is inflation overtaking your ability to keep up with things. Your pension, most of the time, is not inflation adjusted. Again, unless you work for the government, your pension is not inflation adjusted. So if you take that pension, you're locking yourself in on a fixed income, which is one of the worst things that you can do in retirement.
Yeah, that Social Security check that we said averages about $1,500 a month, that's not going to go up and keep up with inflation either. They do oftentimes get a cost of living adjustment, but it's not going to keep up with real inflation as a general rule. I want to go back as we finish up this segment to talk about that income component. You know, a lot of people, they come from humble beginnings and they may think that there's nothing that they can do. I want to say this. Most of the people we work with hail from humble beginnings.
Yes.
Some weren't even that lucky, and they got to the finish line, and they are having the retirement outcome the successful retirement that they dreamed of because they did some of the things that we're going to talk about in today's show. So we're talking about what type of retirement saver are you? One of 5 types we've talked about, uncertain strugglers. The next one is after the break. Be back in just a second.
At Gen Wealth, one of our standards is that we value good communication. One of my favorite quotes about good communication is from George Bernard Shaw. He said, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. If you ever doubt that, come to my house, listen to my 16-year-old son and my 13-year-old daughter having a conversation and see what happens, because they will walk away with completely different understandings of the conversation that has occurred." It happens every time. It's okay, they're still learning communication. But here at Gen Wealth, we believe that that's something you need to experience every time you walk in our door, that you need to feel understood, that you need to feel listened to. So you'll see a change in how we're even communicating. If you're talking about something that's very serious, very personal, you'll even hear a change in our tone of voice, because that's just how good communication is supposed to be. But it also means that we can feed back to you what you've shared with us, just so you know that we're listening. We value good communication.
You ain't heard nothing yet. Buckle up, because we're back with the Get Ready for the Future show.
Identifying 5 types of retirement savers on today's Get Ready for the Future show. Which type are you? And some tips on overcoming some of the challenges that may be associated with being that type. We talked about the uncertain strugglers in the last segment, and that group makes up 29% of the population. They really have a hard time visualizing retirement. They're not taking full advantage maybe of their retirement accounts at work. Where you come from isn't where you're going, though, and we do have a great opportunity to find out where you are along that journey. Find out if you're on track. We've got something called the 15-minute retirement, and it really takes probably less than 15 minutes. And the amount of time you spend checking your social media, Twitter or Facebook, you can put in some information and find out where are you, generally speaking, on the path towards retirement. Here's how to do it. Get your checkup free by visiting our website, 15minuteretirement.com. That's 15, the number 15, minuteretirement.com, or just text the word checkup to 501-381-5228. That goes for whatever type of retirement saver you are. You don't have to be the uncertain struggler. Our next retirement saver or type of retirement saver is the optimistic dreamer. And as soon as I read that title, I said, this is the young group, right? And sure enough, as I look through there, it makes up only 13% of the population, but nearly half are under 45 and 26% are under 35. Well, good for them for dreaming. That's exciting. You should have an optimistic look towards your financial future and have a desire to be financial independent. We love to see that, but retirement does seem far away for this group, and it is if they are statistically younger, but they do plan in their minds, right, in their dreams, to have a very productive, very successful retirement. So it's a good start.
Yeah, I think their intentions are actually pretty good. The question that I would ask this group is, okay, what are you doing about it? What positive, very affirmative steps are you taking toward that goal? Do you know what your financial independence number is? Do you understand what financial independence is and what it's going to take to get there? I think that's the number one thing. And Candace, I think the danger here, if you want to call it that, is the feeling that they think, oh, it's just all going to work out. It's all going to be fine. It's all going to work out. I'm going to throw some money at something, and that should take care of it.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the poll that they done on, I don't know if it's teenagers or school-age children, but one of the top careers that they dream of being is a YouTuber. You know, and they're going to strike it rich being a YouTuber, and so I don't really have to plan or do anything because that's going to take care of everything.
Yeah. I do think, Scott, there is a general thought process about this, that, you know, it's all going to work out. And oftentimes these optimistic dreamers are, well, I'm putting enough money in to get my company matching my 401k, so that should be enough. They haven't really done the math to look at, okay, if you keep doing that, where's that ultimately going to get you? And I think that's one of the breakdowns in this area.
And I do think, John, it is a challenge to figure that out when you're 30 or 40 years away from retirement. That's
Sure.
probably going to change.
Yes.
But you do need to throw a target out there so you know what you're shooting at, where you're trying to get to. The other thing I think about when I think about optimistic dreamers, we did a whole show on the FIRE movement.
Yes.
And I think that's part of it, too, when I think about, hey, the optimism is great, the dreaming part is great, but where's the reality in I'm going to retire at 40? Okay,
Yeah.
what do you really have to do to retire at 40, and what challenges are you going to face if you really think you're going to do that?
Boy, the longevity risk, when you think about the three big risks of retirement, we talked about inflation. Think about how much inflation is going to go up from the time somebody's 40 just until they're 65.
Yep.
And so if they're thinking about retiring at 40, you've got an inflation risk that you've got to deal with, but you also have the longevity risk. And what does that mean? That means you run out of money before you run out of life or run out of time in your life. And so when you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to retire at 40, do you really understand the mathematical dynamics of how much money it would take for you to be able to sustain your income from age 40 until 80 or 85?
Yeah, for a lot of those people that want to retire that early, especially before age 59 and a half, do not realize that everything that they're putting into retirement savings, that there would be a penalty if they withdrew it. So
Right.
you're going to have to save on top of retirement money in order to retire early like that.
Yeah, that's a great
They
point.
don't understand that.
So that without a plan, the future just happens to you. We have a great idea, especially if you're in this younger age group and you're a long way out, but you have great optimism when you think about your financial future and your chances to be financial independent. And that is our Money Guide program. I think
Yes.
that's a great place for this generation, or even if you're a little older but you think like that too. I really am motivated to do something, but I don't know where to start. This Money Guide program is a goals-based planning program to keep you on track to and through retirement, designed specifically for those who are in the middle of their financial journey and need a coach to guide them as they balance family and finance. And that's relatively new to the Gen Wealth offerings, but it's a great value we have here.
Scott, I cannot imagine anything that would be better than some software that would help you to understand how you take care of the needs that you have today. And let's just enumerate those for just a second. First of all, you got kids, and man, do they burn through the money these days, like incredibly so. You've got a house mortgage, you're paying for cars. Maybe you've even got elderly parents that you're needing to help with, or at least that's kind of stretching your financial budget a little bit. You got a lot of stuff going on, but you also have these goals and these dreams. How do you balance those two things? How do you say, okay, I want to be sure to take care of what's in front of me right now, today, and I also need to be able to climb that tree that we were talking about and look ahead over the top of the forest and be able to see where I'm going in the future. If that's you, then you need to reach out to us on our Money Guide program, because Money Guide actually does that. We sit down with you and then we understand what your current situation is. Maybe you need to replace a car every 4 or 5 years. We can build that into your plan. There's a lot of things that can be accomplished these days with the technology that we've got at our disposal, but marrying that technology with the human, real-world advice of a financial advisor really is the alchemy that I think gets us to that goal that a lot of people in that age group are looking for.
Can we talk too a little bit about cost? Because people may be thinking every dime I've got is in my 401k. That's okay. That's not what this program is about.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got the ability to engage with you and do it on a very economical basis. There's an initial sign-up fee for Money Guide, and then it is a small monthly fee per month. You don't even have to have any assets to invest with us here at Gen Wealth to engage in this program. Incredibly valuable for those folks that are putting a lot of money in their corporate retirement plan. They don't have an IRA. One of the things, Candace, that is a huge impediment of people coming to see a financial advisor is they say, well, I don't have any money to invest.
Yeah, but I've met with a few couples lately that are younger. They're coming in. They want a plan. They don't have a lot of assets yet, but, talking about their emergency fund, they thought they had too many, or a couple that I met with earlier this week thought they had too much in savings. And he just said, yeah, I'm dumb. I've got too much in here. It's not earning anything. I said, well, let's talk about why you're not dumb. And we talked about this Money Guide program. And the really neat thing that got him excited about it was the ability for him to sign in on his own and look at his plan anytime he wants to, if it's after hours or on the weekend, make little tweaks to his plan to see, what if I did this, what would happen to my plan? Or what if I, bought this, what would happen? And so it's really neat and a user-friendly program. And I thought that he was really interested in taking advantage of that.
And one of the greatest things about that, Scott, you can take things for a test drive in this program. You can go in and make those tweaks, but it doesn't change your plan until you call your advisor and say, hey, I made some tweaks in that. Take a look at it, see if you concur with what I'm talking about. So it does give you some hands-on control of things without actually changing the plan until those things that you've tweaked on are confirmed.
So if you're an optimistic dreamer, I want you to write this phone number down. We've got a new phone number, by the way, a toll-free number wherever you're hearing our voice today or watching us, 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. So call us, get started with the Money Guide program, and be that turn that optimistic dreaming into a real plan. Because I know one guy used to say, a dream without a plan is just a wish.
That's absolutely true. And one of the reasons we have this new toll-free number, Scott, is the GenWealth team is expanding. We're now in 3 states. We're in Arkansas, Louisiana, now in Brentwood, Tennessee, the greater Nashville area. Christian Von Allman is our new team member over there. So if you're listening or watching over in the Tennessee area, we've got folks in the Middle Tennessee is I think how they phrase it over there. Middle Tennessee to serve you as well, and we can do the Ready to Retire process, the Money Guide process, wherever you fall in that category, we've got folks that can help you with that.
We're going to talk more about the Ready to Retire process a little later in the show. Only have a couple of minutes left in this segment, but we'll start the process of going into our third type. We're talking about 5 types of retirement savers today. Uncertain strugglers was our first, optimistic dreamers our second. The third one is ambitious risk taker.
Oh boy.
And this group makes up 28% of the population. They are generally young and optimistic, so they include a little bit of the optimism from the previous group. But when I think ambitious risk taker, they're okay with being aggressive, right? They're more likely to be open to new and different opportunities. Nearly half are under the age of 45, and 28% are under 35. Now, I thought this was interesting. 43% do have a financial advisor, but that means more than half don't. 75% expect their income sources to last through retirement. They trust financial advisors, but do their own research and are more likely to consider themselves experts in retirement planning. The aggressiveness, I think, is something we ought to take on first.
Yeah, let's talk about that quickly. Number one, I think that if you're young, we would agree with you. Being aggressive is certainly appropriate. It is in line with what your risk profile should be. The folks I worry about in this category is those that are very near retirement and still have that pedal all the way down because they're afraid. They have a bad case of FOMO. They're fear of missing out. Yeah. I'm going to miss some returns, so I've got to have that pedal down all the way till the point in time that I'm ready to take income or maybe even on into retirement. That's where the danger is.
When you think about who this group is, too, they can have a little bit of recency bias creep in here, too.
Absolutely.
Because if you think about where the markets have been recently, it's real easy to think I throw money at it and I'm going to get a 40% return, right? I mean, that was the 12-month trailing average, about 40% on the S&P 500. But we're seeing how markets go both ways just this week. So we'll talk a little bit more about that from the investment side when it comes to our third type of retirement saver, ambitious risk taker. Is that you? We'll talk a little bit more about it on the Get Ready for the Future show after this break. There's always been power in standing up for what you believe in, challenging the status quo, and never accepting the ordinary. What about the rest of your life? Will you settle? Or will your retirement be more? More fun, more family than finances,
more than just investments. Connect with us at GenWealth and harness the power of more.
Meet the GenWealth team in person at our GenWealth Academy workshops happening in your area. For more information, visit getreadyforthefuture.com/events. Now, back to the show.
866-653-PLAN to connect with a GenWealth advisor as we welcome you back to the Get Ready for the Future show. Talking today about 5 types of retirement savers that lots of surveying, lots of statistical information has been compiled, and the results are psychologically, what type of retirement saver are you? Are you an uncertain struggler? That was the one we talked about in the first segment. Or an optimistic dreamer? The third one we just got started on before the break was ambitious risk taker, making up 28% of the U.S. population. Most of them are younger and they are more aggressive. An ambitious risk taker would lead you to believe they are. But I think the challenge there, and John, you talked about it too, your investment objective, if you're younger, it's still a good idea to be aggressive, but it's a mentality thing for me. We talk a lot about on our show the difference between chasing a rate of return with your investments and trying to achieve an outcome. An outcome is really the key when it comes to retirement.
You should be 100% focused on the outcome of your retirement, meaning what is your income? You know, that is a little bit of a play on words, but it's very legitimate. The outcome of your retirement has got to result in income replacement because, look, you're working for a paycheck right now, and as long as you work, you will have that paycheck in place. When retirement comes, you're basically walking off of that paycheck cliff, if you will, and there's nothing there to support you other than Social Security and the assets that you have. So the key is trying to figure out how you can replace a substantial part of the paycheck that you've got in retirement. That, I think, is really the only objective. And for people that are getting close to retirement, one of the things that we talk to them about is taking enough risk for their plan to work, but not so much risk that their plan is at risk. You do not want to risk. There are no do-overs in retirement, Candace, and so you can't really chase that return like you maybe could have in your earlier days as you approach retirement.
Yeah, we call that the retirement red zone, right? In the last 5 to 10 years before you retire, or even a few years after you retire, you cannot afford to make a mistake, right? And we also have to talk with our clients about when we do put together their plan and implement the plan, that not every single account of theirs is going to look like, oh, we've hit it out of the park and we've made some great returns.
Not going to track the S&P 500.
Yeah, exactly. So there's going to be a portion of the portfolio that's very conservative and is not intended to make a lot.
Scott, one of the things that we deal with as people are approaching retirement is what to do with Social Security. And I know for risk takers, you're thinking, well, Social Security is probably not going to be there for me or what have you. I want to invite even people that think that to join us on Tuesday, May 18th at 6:30 for our workshop called Maximizing Retirement Income with Social Security. Now, this is a little bit of a different take on the purpose of Social Security. One of the things that we like to explain to people is that Social Security is actually a tool that enables your money to last much longer in retirement. And if you think about that, if you didn't have Social Security and you only had your money to live on in retirement, you'd be in jeopardy because that money could run out and you don't have a safety net. Social Security basically comes along and says, okay, you can have this much money per month coming in, so you don't have to take so much money out of your retirement account, and that enables that retirement account to stretch out longer and longer and longer. We're going to talk about this at the workshop. It is coming up on May 18th at 6:30. If you're watching on Facebook Live, you can actually click in the link that is in the comments to register for that Social Security workshop, or you can go to getreadyforthefuture.com/events to register. We have a few more seats available. That is coming up on Tuesday, May 18th.
I want to point out, because it leads right into this next point about the ambitious risk takers, that they trust financial advisors, but they do their own research and are more likely to consider themselves experts in retirement planning. So it's good that you do your own research, and I do think we have lots of clients that like to participate in the process, really truly understand everything, and that's fine. But the expert part in retirement planning, this group also tends to focus a little more on fees, right? To think about, if I do this all myself, that I won't have to pay somebody to do it. I will make more on my investments. Well, when you talk about Social Security, when you talk about the retirement red zone, you talk about a different investment strategy, you talk about retirement income, that shows you that retirement is so much more than investments.
It really is, and I think that you can be penny wise and pound foolish. I think you can save a little bit on a fee, and it might make this much difference in your retirement. And when I'm on the radio, I probably shouldn't say this much and use my gestures, but I'm talking about maybe it makes an inch difference in your retirement. But sitting down with a financial advisor and having the proper plan could make feet or yards difference in the outcome of your retirement. And again, it is not what you save, it's what you don't know that can hurt you in retirement.
Yeah, and what about a bad move tax-wise, right?
Yeah.
Those types of things. Those are actually dollars and cents that you could save that are definitely more than just the investment returns. There's a value in picking the right advisor.
Scott, you mentioned taxes. I can tell you that I have seen time and time and time again that we have actually caused a client to change their course on what they thought they wanted to do from a tax standpoint, because someone had told them, water cooler conversation, that friend, that family member or whatever, someone had, probably with the best intentions, told them, well, I would do this.
Yeah.
And you get to analyzing it, and it doesn't make financial sense. And I think that's really where the value of a financial advisor comes into play. Are you going to pay for advice? Absolutely. You're going to pay for any good advice that you get. The question is not what you pay for that advice. The question is, what is the value of that advice going to add to your overall retirement picture? And I think that time after time, we can prove that working with a financial advisor is additive to that process.
And just talking back with that water cooler conversation, those friends that you listen to and you talk with, that may not be your situation. You may come in and say, well, my friend did this. My friend does a good job. I trust my friend, so I need to do that too. Well, let's talk about about your situation, because your situation may be completely different and it may not be good for you.
Yeah, and that goes from all the way from the decision about Social Security all the way to the decision about how you invest your money and everything in between. You need very specific, specialized, customized recommendations for your situation, because everybody is really different.
All right, we got to get rolling here. We've got two more types of retirement savers to talk about. The next one is pretty much the opposite of ambitious risk taker. It's cautious preparer. And as you might imagine, this group is a little older. The group makes up 17% of the population. They are 68% are over 45. 20% are between ages 65 and 75. Many have prepared for the worst and stuck with what they believe are tried and true investment strategies. Though cautious preparers have knowledge about retirement planning, they still have questions. They do their own research, but they do tend to rely, I think, more on experts. Some have even calculated their retirement income needs. 27% are already retired. That's the highest percentage among the 5 savers. First thing I think about when you think about cautious preparer as it relates to age, they likely have seen a lot. You think about the recency bias. We talked about the risk takers. If they're younger, they've pretty much seen this market go one way. This group has lived through quite a bit when it comes to the markets.
Yeah, I think that if you understand that the last real extended recession we had was back in 2008, and you think about, well, that wasn't that long ago. Actually, it was. It was about, 14 years ago.
Getting there.
And so, there are a lot of people that really haven't seen anything but blue skies. And all of a sudden, when there's some storm clouds coming, they go, well, I'll get around that, until you can't. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to be, to some extent, a cautious preparer. And these folks are really the people that have to balance their caution against the opportunities that they have. One of the things that we do in the Income for Life model, which is part of the Ready to Retire process at Gen Wealth, is that we have different buckets or segments of money. Some of that money is going to be invested very, very conservatively because you're going to need that money in the near term. Some of that money is going to be invested more aggressively because you're going to need that money 15 or 20 years down the road. Some of it is going to be moderate. Some of it is going to be sort of a hybrid investment, if you will, money that you may need in 10 or 15 years. So you've got to align the risk profile of when you're going to use that money with the type of investment that you need. And so, Scott, there is no one formula. You can't just say, well, I'm conservative or I'm aggressive, because neither one of those work in retirement income planning.
Well, let's go back to the risk taking. You will still be taking on risk even if you are a cautious preparer, right? Or I said that wrong. No, cautious preparer is right. Yeah. So if you're very cautious and you don't want to take risk in the market, what other type of risk might you be taking on? Inflation risk is chief among my thoughts as we talk about why we want to do that bucketing strategy. We need to have some of your money invested in an asset class that is going to outpace inflation. Because if you start, we talked about this earlier in the show with Social Security checks, Candace, and pensions, we know that we are going to have to live on a retirement income that has to increase over time.
Right. And so then what would happen if inflation risk becomes a problem for these clients who are too cautious? If they've been too conservative, they could run out of money because they didn't have some growing while they were spending.
Yes. You think about how often somebody says, okay, I've got $1 million. If I just take $40,000 out a year, I'm going to live 20 years. That's not taking into consideration you're going to need more than $40,000 if you're starting with $40,000. So that inflation risk has to be taken on. And the other thing I think about, too, when I think about cautious preparers, I think about what we call the just-in-case retirement. That's what a lot of people tend to enter retirement with. I'm going to squeeze by on my Social Security check, and this big pile of money that I've spent a lifetime slaving over, sacrificing over, spending time getting ready for retirement is going to be my just-in-case money. If something happens, that's the only reason I'm going to tap it.
We had someone come in earlier this week that basically said, we don't know what to do with this money. We don't know whether we need to take it now or take it later, or we just don't know what we need to do. We think we need to probably save it just in case. And they literally said just in case. And so we're talking through that, and we're helping them to come to an understanding of how your plan is a just in case plan, but it is actually giving you some freedom to use some of that money now while you're putting up some of it later for the future when just in case might develop.
501-653-PLAN. That's the number you can call to connect with the Gen Wealth advisor. You can
actually 866-653.
What did I say?
501.
I combined a couple of those up
That's
there.
okay.
866-653-PLAN. Thank you, John. You can also email us, info@getreadyforthefuture.com. 5 types of retirement savers. Our 5th and final one is next.
A game warden noticed how a particular fellow named Sam consistently caught more fish than anyone else. The successful fisherman invited the game warden to come along with him and observe. So the next morning, the two fellows met at the dock and took off in Sam's boat. When they got to the middle of the lake, Sam stopped the boat and the warden sat back to see how it was done. Sam's approach was really simple. He took out a stick of dynamite, lit it, and threw it in the air. The explosion rocked the lake with such a force that dead fish immediately began to surface. Sam took out a net and started scooping them up. Well, you can imagine the reaction of the game warden. When he recovered from the shock of it all, he began yelling at Sam. He said, "Hey, buddy, you can't do this. I'll put you in jail. You'll be paying every fine there is in the book." The game warden was just incredulous. Sam, meantime, just simply set down his net, took out another stick of dynamite. He lit it, tossed it this time in the lap of the game warden with these words: "Are you going to sit there all day complaining, or are you going to fish?" For some of us, the same question could be asked about our retirement. This is John Shrewsbury with Gen Wealth Financial Advisors. Whether it's trying to find the best investment or just worrying about the stock market, a lot of folks seem frozen with retirement indecision, and that very well could lead to an explosion of your own, an explosion of your dreams for a comfortable future. Plan now for your time on the lake, or wherever your dreams take you.
A smarter, simpler, more personal approach to retirement continues with the Get Ready for the Future show.
Scott Inman, John Shrewsbury, Candace Stanley back on the Get Ready for the Future show, talking about 5 types of retirement savers today. And our final type is purposeful planners. A lot of alliteration with that one. This group makes up 12% of the population. Many are nearing retirement or have already retired. 42% are 55 plus. Purposeful planners are often well positioned to enjoy retirement. Most have a financial plan, devote time to retirement planning, and have a good amount of knowledge about retirement planning. 78% expect their sources of income to last throughout retirement. That is the highest percentage among the 5 saver types. Confidence is the thing that pops out right there, right? I mean, you want to have a plan, and if you have a plan, I think you tend to be more confident than if you don't. And the sad part about that, though, is it only makes up 12% of the population.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these are the heroes of the bunch, if you will. These are the folks that are doing it right. These are the folks that have been intentional about their retirement, and they really should be what everybody else should aspire to be. I'm really taken aback by the fact that this only makes up 12% of the population, but we already know that a lot of people really haven't journeyed down this road to try to figure out this whole retirement thing. That's why we exist at Gen Wealth Financial Advisors. This is a huge problem, regardless of what age group you're thinking about, whether you're just getting started, whether you're in that middle where you're getting pulled between your kids, your own life, and your parents' life, or if you're ready to take that next step into life, which is retirement. At any particular point in time, you've got to be intentional about what you're doing. And if you do that, then guess what? You're really going to be unique because there's only 12% of the population that's really taken on this challenge. Candace, I think that when we see people who come into our office to talk with us about this, oftentimes it's the fear of the unknown when they are thinking about this plan thing. They really don't understand what it is they're jumping off into, and they really don't understand the benefits.
Yeah, I think one of the important things to note here is that if you see yourself in one of these types of retirement savers and you don't like that's where you are, you don't have to stay there. Coming in for a plan will definitely get you closer to being that purposeful planner.
Yes.
And give you that peace of mind that may help in retirement.
Yeah, I think it's too important to point out that if you are sitting here listening to the 5 types and you think you are the purposeful planner, what is the plan? Because a lot of people think they do have a plan. John, you're thinking, only 12% of the population has a plan. Well, if we ask people who think they have a plan, I think the number would be higher, but they may not.
So look, a plan is on paper, on purpose. It is not in your brain of this is how I think I'm going to do it, because I'll almost assure you that it's not nearly comprehensive enough to take in all the what ifs of retirement, because there are a ton of what ifs when you're involving retirement. So retirement planning is something that we do as a profession, and it is very encompassing in terms of all the possibilities. Now, we can't cover every possibility, but we can certainly get much broader than somebody can just in their own mind about how they think retirement is going to work out. A lot of people, we saw this very commonly a few years ago, and we're seeing more of it now. A lot of people think, well, I'm going to buy rental property and that's going to be my retirement income. Well, that works until it doesn't, until you have to spend a lot of money on a house, or until you get to the age or the health condition where you can't do a lot of that work. And so those are things that again, you've got to kind of take into account, and that's where planning can come into the equation. Not saying that real estate can't be part of your overall retirement plan, because we have a lot of people that do that, but you have to have some contingencies there.
All right, so if you are 12% of the population and you are a purposeful planner, and that plan is written on paper, on purpose, what is the tip for you? Well, I think one tip that stands out for me is don't set it and forget it. We do have, when we build a plan for our clients, very commonly one of the questions from them before we can even get to it is what happens next? And I
Yes.
think you should evaluate that if you are a purposeful planner and you had a plan and it was built with a financial advisor, but you haven't seen that financial advisor in 3, 4, 5 years, that's a problem. The tip there is you need a process of regularly meeting with your advisor.
Candace, that's something you and I do on a regular basis. Candace and I are on a team here at Gen Wealth, and we work together with our clients. And a good part of our week is spent with what we call annual reviews, where and it doesn't necessarily have to be every 365 days, but it does need to be sometime during that year period of time where we're sitting down and accounting for what's going on and planning what's next.
Yeah, our role does not end just with putting a plan together and saying, here you go, good luck, there's your plan. We continue to work with you and have a relationship with you and update that plan because life happens and changes come, and the plan needs to update with you.
I say often it's an outbound call once a year from us. We're
Yes.
going to expect to schedule you an annual review, but that's if nothing's really changed. We're going to still touch base with you once a year. If something happens, like Candace said, life is going to happen, our clients are coming in and meeting with us and updating that plan. It is a living, breathing document. It is not a set it and forget it. So those are our 5 types of retirement savers. So what's the big takeaway? I hope that maybe you've identified which type you are, and I hope that we've provided some clarity on communicating the challenges that can be associated with being that type. But it comes back to what I said a minute ago, John. What's the plan? The plan is the thing that drives behavior, because so much of this is psychological, so much of it is behavior driven. And if you are floating around out there without something written down, where you're going, how you're going to get there, and then when you reach that, it's not a destination, then the income begins, and it begins a process of its own. If you don't have that, you are just floating in the breeze, really.
You know what happens to people that are in a situation like that? They roll up on retirement and they get a little bit bug-eyed and they go, wow, life just got real all of a sudden. All of this was theoretical when I was saving money, and one of these days I'm going to retire. And then you roll up on that date where you suddenly realize that basically your existence, your survival, your needs, wants, and wishes all 100% depend on what move you make next. The question that I would ask is, are you ready for that kind of enormity of a decision? If you haven't planned for it, then you're probably not ready. And that is the value to what we do here at Gen Wealth Financial Advisors. If you think about it, it involves a lot of things like investment strategy. It involves Social Security maximization. It involves creating guaranteed income to basically meet those basic needs that you've got in retirement. It involves reducing taxes in retirement. It involves a whole plethora of things that you and your advisor are going to work on as you head toward retirement. Take that opportunity to do that by actually engaging with us here at Gen Wealth. And you can do that very easily, Scott. Reach out to Anna Olive, our new client introduction specialist, at that toll-free number, 866-653-PLAN, 866-653-7526. Very easy to get engaged with that process, because you do have to have that plan regardless of wherever you are on that continuum of time as you work toward retirement.
So we talked earlier in the show about the Money Guide platform as well. So we have 2 opportunities there that fit wherever you are along your journey towards retirement. If you are in the middle of your life or even just really getting started, Money Guide is the place that you want to go. That same number gets you started in that process. But if you are 5 to 10 years out from retirement, Candace called it the retirement red zone. That's what we're fond of calling it. That's when you want to look at the Ready to Retire process, because it is specifically built for redesigning that investment strategy now that the game is changing.
Yes, absolutely. And Scott, I'll give a little bit of a tease. Toward the end of the month, we're going to announce a brand new program here at Gen Wealth for folks that are just trying to figure it out. They're trying to get started. You really are more concerned about being financially well than you are being financially independent, because you've got to start somewhere. Yeah. And so there's a gap there, that beginning stage of your financial life. It may not be the beginning stage of your work career. You may be 30 or 40 years old old and still don't have it together from a financial standpoint, we're going to have a special program coming up at the end of the month to talk about that. Stay tuned for more information on that from Gen Wealth Financial Advisors.
The goal is here to meet you wherever you are. We believe everyone should have access to a financial advisor and access to a financial plan. Well, you heard the bell. It is time for our final thoughts, and Candace, the third chair, always leads us off. Yes.
Well, I think that of all of these 5 types, there are probably some good things to take from each of them, and so it's probably not good to be one particular one at all and just have a balance of all of them.
I would say that I think that you can identify with where you fit in, but it's okay to be where you are, but it's not okay to stay there. You probably, unless you are that last category that we talked about, that purposeful planner, you've got an opportunity to change, and that opportunity to change really begins with a simple phone call. 501-653-7355 if you're in Central Arkansas, 866-653-PLAN. Anywhere in the United States, give us a call here at Gen Wealth Financial Advisors. We would love to sit down with you and help you to evolve from where you are right now into that purposeful planner.
We talk about that first step. My final thought is we recognize, too, that maybe you're just not quite ready to get all of that together and come in and meet with a financial advisor. Maybe you're still just terrified of the thought, right? There's still an opportunity for you to get some resource, get some education, find out where you are. We want you to be able to know if you're on track, find out the likelihood of a successful retirement, a broad view. Now, this is not an on paper, on purpose, full-blown financial plan, but you can kind of get an idea of pullback, if you will. When you're talking about slicing through the jungle, you need to be able to get up a little bit higher and see the right perspective. Go to 15minuteretirement.com, 15minuteretirement.com, or text the word checkup to 501-381-5228. Again, it's 501-381-5228 to begin finding out if you're on track for retirement. Great show today, guys. Candace, thanks for being with us. 5 types of retirement savers. Hope you learned something, and hope you'll join us again next week.
The Gen Wealth Financial Team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 501-653-7355. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Gen Wealth Financial Advisors is an Arkansas registered investment advisor with securities offered through LPL Financial, member